There are 21 win conditions in Clash Royale, and today I'm about to show you how to use every single one of them. Hey guys, Legendaray here, and welcome back to another Clash Royale video. Today I'm going to be going over a guide on every single win condition currently in Clash Royale. And no, I'm not counting the Elite Barbarians or the Mega Knight as a win condition. The 21 win conditions I'm going over are going to be on screen right now. For each win condition, I'm going to be going over a couple of tips on how to play it effectively, how to build a deck around the win condition, and then I'm going to showcase a very solid deck that I would recommend you guys play if you're too lazy to build your own deck and just want to use that win condition in the arena. Now, before we get into the video, if you could please leave a like down below and subscribe to the channel for more videos like this one. Also, use code Legendaray in the shop. You get the dealio. Let's get right into the video. Balloon. Now, the balloon is a card that requires very niche counters, making it a very good option across all levels of Clash Royale. When you're building a balloon deck, the common support cards include a miner to tank for the balloon, a normal tank for the balloon, may that be something cheap such as an ice golem, or expensive such as a giant. We also need some air support, as well as spells such as the zap, snowball, rage, and the freeze. Now, balloon decks are divided into two flavors: cycle decks and beefier control decks. The faster balloon decks will focus on outcycling the opponent's air counters. On the other hand, a control type balloon deck focuses on building up larger balloon pushes from scratch, forcing your way through to the opponent's tower. Now, when playing the balloon, the most common placement is to always play that balloon to the outer edge. In fact, an even further placement like this can sometimes trick your opponents and allow your balloon to just head straight towards the tower. To showcase an example balloon deck, I chose this insanely popular balloon freeze deck that has been in this meta for a very long time. Definitely a solid choice for anyone to pick up and play. Battle Ram. Battle Ram is a fast, high-pressure card that requires immediate attention from your opponents. Therefore, it's most commonly seen in bridge spam type decks, which focus on cheap spamming at the bridge to force the opponent to be constantly defending. However, a lone Battle Ram can oftentimes be very easy to stop. Therefore, we'll commonly support a Battle Ram with other quick pressure cards, such as the Royal Ghost and the Bandit. Again, spells will also be essential in taking out or slowing the opponent's defense as well. When using the Battle Ram, I find that most of the time I'll be using it as a double lane pressure card, especially in combination with my other bridge spam units. With all that being said, there definitely are going to be situations where the Battle Ram can be part of a massive push, but these pushes are generally going to be few and far between. The example deck I'm sharing today is the classic P.E.K.K.A. Bridge Spam deck, very well rounded in terms of good quality defense as well as high pressure offense. Electro Giant. The Electro Giant is an insanely easy win condition to use since it requires some very niche counters. So if the opponent wastes any of their counters, it's just a very good option to just straight up go in with an Electro Giant in the back. Again, with an Electro Giant, you simply need to get the Giant itself to the tower, and once that reflection damage gets on, oh, it's just gonna be game over. Common support cards are very similar to a traditional Golem beatdown deck. You can go classic with cards such as a Baby Dragon, Night Witch, or Ice Wizard, or you can go with kind of a new age style of beatdown with the Dark Prince, Inferno Dragon, and Mother Witch. In fact, you might not even need support troops. Given that the opponent has no good counters in cycle, simply using a spell such as a Lightning or a Tornado will allow the Electro Giant to reach the tower completely unsupported. Keep in mind that the Electro Giant is an 8 elixir card, so after playing it, you will only have 2 to 3 elixir to defend any immediate push from the opponent. The Electro Giant I'm sharing is the classic Electro Giant beatdown deck that you see all the time in this meta. Very solid defense and easy to play. Elixir Golem. Elixir Golem is a card that is very difficult for lesser experienced players to defend, meaning that it's a prime card to take advantage of. The playstyle is still beatdown, but because the Elixir Golem is so cheap, that means that the support cards that you can include can in turn be more expensive. The classic support troops are going to be, the 3 dragons, as well as the battle healer and the Night Witch. In addition, it's important to combo the Elixir Golem with the rage spell as well as the tornado, because since the Elixir Golem will give elixir once the elixir blobs die, you need to pressure as much as possible as quickly as possible. Really, you really just need to spam everything at the bridge and try to force your way to the opponent's tower before the elixir blobs die. In double and triple elixir, the cheap cost of the golem even allows you to cycle a second elixir golem on offense, either in the same lane or in the opposite lane to apply some double lane pressure. The elixir golem deck I'm sharing today is a little bit more spicy. It's got the Sparky in it because I just figured, why not? Giant. Giant is one of the very first win conditions introduced to a player, so players are very familiar with it, and many of you guys will probably have him at a decently high level. The Giant is a mid-cost win condition, meaning that it's not as risky as the Golem, but its potential rewards are also slightly less as well. However, the cheaper cost also means that the Giant is slightly more versatile, because you can either play him in the back, or you can play him at the bridge a bit more freely. Now, there are a few types of Giant decks. There's a traditional Giant deck, when you try and force your way through classic beatdown style, or you can alternatively combo the Giant with a secondary win condition, such as the Miner and Graveyard. The deck I chose to share today is a Giant Graveyard deck. Comboing the Giant with the Graveyard, very difficult for the opponents to stop both. Goblin Barrel. Goblin Barrel is a fast 3 elixir card, and it can be easily countered by a plethora of cards. Therefore, the barrel needs to be in a fast-paced deck, with the goal of baiting out your opponent's counters or outcycling your opponent's counters. Common support cards are pretty obvious. Anything that requires a small spell to counter, such as the Goblin Gang, the Dark Goblin, Princess, Rascals, the Princes, Skeleton Armies, Skeleton Barrels. I don't think I need to name any more, to be honest. However, due to the popularity of bait decks, people are very prepared to face it. So oftentimes, you're gonna end up having to carry a secondary win condition. The popular ones include Rocket for spell cycling, or the Royal Giant to force your way to the opponent's tower. Finally, knowing how to use tricky Goblin Barrels can be also very important in a match. When used properly, it can get you tower damage even if the opponent has a counter to the Goblin Barrel in hand. The Goblin Barrel deck I'm sharing today is the classic log bait deck. It's very popular, and its ability to overwhelm your opponent is absolutely astounding. Goblin Drill. The Goblin Drill, just like the barrel, needs to be very fast-paced, since many people nowadays are very prepared to face it, and therefore, the most powerful drill decks will be in either Cycle or Bridge Bam decks. The common support cards will have some combination of the following: Cycle cards, such as the Knight, Skeletons, or the Fire Spirit; bait cards, such as the Princess, Goblin Gang, and the Wall Breakers; or pressure cards, such as the Bandit, Royal Ghost, and Cannon card. What makes this such a unique condition is that in addition to an offensive utility, it can be used on defense as well, because it serves as a building after all. Now, the deck I'm sharing today is a Goblin Drill Bridge Bam deck. I believe this variation is a little bit easier to pick up than just a straight up Goblin Drill cycle deck, but both are going to be very solid options. Goblin Giant. The Goblin Giant is a 6 elixir beatdown card that kind of has built-in support in 2 spear goblins that are riding on the Giant's back. This gives the Giant immediate synergy with small spells to take out squishy units, as well as larger spells to take out some of the tankier ones. This Giant is very fast, so decks in it will oftentimes build support units first from the back, which are actually slower than the Goblin Giant, and then go in with the Goblin Giant at the bridge. The speed allows the Goblin Giant to very quickly reach the opponent's tower, but it comes at the expense of some hit points, as the Goblin Giant is one of the least tanky of the big Clash Royale tanks. The support cards you'll need for the Goblin Giant are very niche. You're pretty much only going to see him in some Sparky decks, a few double Prince decks, as well as maybe a couple of minor bait ones. The deck I'm sharing today is a Goblin Giant Sparky deck. Very effective, and in combination with the Rage spell, just speeds up that Goblin Giant and is very difficult for opponents to stop. Golem. Golem is another one of the easier win conditions to pick up and play, because the recent meta makes it much more acceptable to make 8 elixir commitments without punishment. Secondly, death damage on the Golem's still quite significant, so you just gotta get that Golem to the tower, and it's gonna get you so much damage. Now, there are a wide range of beatdown decks. Some are more focused on defense, while others are completely aggressive, going for tower trades after tower trades after tower trade. Breaking down a Golem deck, they're oftentimes seen with the traditional support units such as Baby Dragon and Night Witch. The most common spells are going to be the Tornado and the Lightning, and if you're going really wild, well then you can rock a clone deck with the clone as well as cards such as the Skeleton Barrel. Like the Electro Giant, it is a very expensive commitment, so you really want to make sure you have some sort of elixir advantage before safely going in with a Golem in the back. The deck I'm sharing today is actually a Golem clone deck. It's very wild with the Prince and the Zappies, but I'll tell you right now, it definitely has power. Graveyard. Graveyard is a very versatile win condition, mostly due to the almost guaranteed damage that you're going to get on every single push. From cycle to control to beatdown, you can see Graveyard in pretty much every single Clash Royale archetype. When building a Graveyard deck, well, most of them have aspects from the following. Most of them will have a cheap mini tank, so you can go in with a Graveyard push at the bridge. Some of them will have splash control, so that they can build up positive traits on defense and go in with a Graveyard counter push. Finally, the more expensive decks will have a major tank such as a Giant or a Mega Knight that will cause some big issues for the opponent. When playing Graveyard, you're going to make sure that they have to spend Elixir on both countering your tank for the Graveyard, as well as spending Elixir to counter the Graveyard itself. But you have to be careful to not allow King Tower activations. The deck I'm sharing today is a cheaper control type of Graveyard deck. It has the control elements in the Baby Dragon and the Dark Prince, but it's slightly cheaper, allowing you to be more aggressive with your graveyards. Hog Rider. Hog Rider is one of the fastest win conditions in Clash Royale, and the immediate pressure means it will require an immediate response, and oftentimes a very specific one. Due to this, the majority of Hog decks are cycle decks, with the goal of outcycling your opponents, getting 1 or 2 hits each push, and eventually chip the tower down swing by swing. That being said, there are more expensive Hog variants that have sort of a 2-wave style of push. The first wave is to force out your Hog counters, and the second wave is to send in the Hog. Most Hog decks will need to be packed with tons of ways to kill the opponent's Hog counters. To deal with buildings, you're going to need spells such as the Fireball, the Earthquake, or the Lightning. To kill swarms, you're going to need cards such as the Valkyrie, the Log, and the Snowball. And to kill heavy hitters, well, you're probably not going to kill the heavy hitters, but you're going to need to deal with them on defense, so you need something such as a Musketeer or an Inferno Dragon. When physically playing the Hog Rider, you're almost always going to play it on the very outer edge of the arena, and if the opponent has a tornado, you're rarely going to be wanting to send in a naked Hog so that the opponent can just get an easy King Tower activation. The Hog deck I'm sharing today is a Hog Earthquake deck. It has the fast capabilities of cycling the Hog Rider, and it has the spell power in the Earthquake cycle as well. Lava Hound. Lava Hound is often a difficult deck to stop, and it's very difficult to build a deck good against Lava Hound that's also good against other archetypes. Now the Hound has of course 2 phases, the tank phase where you build up support, and the second phase where 6 lava pups will pop out once the Lava Hound dies. Now deck composition is pretty simple. You need lots of air support in the dragons, the minions, and the balloon. You need a ground mini tank, such as a Miner or a Valkyrie, and you need 1 ground answer on defense, such as the Tombstone or the Barbarians. Lava Hound is almost always very aggressively played, and you can occasionally even play the Lava Hound at the bridge if you have surviving counter-pushing units. This is a Lava Hound deck I chose to share today. It's slightly cheaper and it's not as strong on defense, but it makes up for it in the offensive pressure that you can mount. Miner. Now the Miner is one of the weaker win conditions on his own. Being only 3 Elixir, most Miner decks today almost always will have a secondary win condition. Now there are 2 main types of Miner decks, a chip style where you send in the Miner over and over again and use support cards such as the Tesla, the Magic Archer, or the Wall Breakers. And there's also a tank style where you send in the Miner to support a tank push, such as one with the Giant or the Lava Hound. Aside from these styles, Miner decks will always carry at least 2 spells, because it's important to have an immediate answer to the opponent's Miner counter. Because the Miner can be sent anywhere in the arena, it's also useful to send the Miner to deal with some annoying ranged cards, such as the Princess or any other support units. The Miner deck shared today is going to be a Miner spell cycle deck, focused on getting tower damage consistently with both the Miner as well as the spells. Mortar. Mortar is one of my favorite win conditions because it has some very unique mechanics that a lot of players just don't know about. On the offensive end, the Mortar has a blind range, meaning that you can actually play offense with defense by getting the opponent's units to walk into the blind range. In addition, it's just a defensive building, so you can use it on defense. Now, Mortar decks are usually on the cheaper end and adopt a chip style gameplay. Usually, they'll also be paired with a secondary win condition, may that be a Miner, a Graveyard, or some Royal Hogs. In addition, a Mortar deck will always need a tank and some sort of ranged defense that will be generally played far away from the Mortar to avoid spell value. Dual win conditions make Mortar very versatile, and you can use one of your win conditions more than the other depending on the matchup. Mortar deck shared today is one with the Royal Hogs, and it's definitely a high pressure chip deck. Royal Giant. Now for those of you that don't know, the Royal Giant basically 10 shots on Arena Tower, and given that it can shoot said tower from 5 tiles away, well, it's definitely a good win condition. When playing a Royal Giant deck, it's important that you need to pack in multiple counters to allow a Royal Giant connection. To counter swarms, you need small spells as well as support such as Dark Prince or the Mother Witch. To counter buildings, you need spells such as the Fireball and the Lightning. And to counter heavy hitters, you're going to want to use the Fisherman to pull those heavy hitting units away. Now there are 2 main offenses you'll be making with the Royal Giant. The first is to play the Royal Giant at the bridge if the opponent spends a lot of elixir in the back, or if you have surviving counter push units. Alternatively, you can play the Royal Giant in the back to build up a bigger push, or to cycle to a second Royal Giant in double or triple elixir. The Royal Giant deck shared today is the popular Royal Giant spam deck, and as you can see, it has all of the support cards that were mentioned before. Royal Hogs. The Royal Hogs are a very unique win condition because you can attack in both single and double lane pushes. Secondly, Royal Hogs have an almost instant first attack time, meaning that it's almost guaranteed to get some sort of tower damage every single push. However, the Hogs themselves are not very tanky, so most Royal Hog decks have built-in Fireball bait with the Flying Machine, Zappies, Royal Recruits, and so on and so forth. These decks are very weak to large amounts of splash, so the most effective way to play Royal Hogs is to apply massive double lane pressure. The Fireball bait ensures players have trouble countering the Hogs and will allow you to build up push after push to slowly overwhelm your opponents. The Royal Hog deck I'm sharing today is the same as the Mortar deck because again, it really is one of the most solid Royal Hog decks in this current meta. Ram Rider. The Ram Rider is another high-pressure, fast-paced card. Therefore, the Ram Rider will mostly be seen in bridge spam decks, whose goal is to apply quick, constant pressure. Therefore, common support cards will include other bridge spam cards such as the Bandit, the Prince, the Royal Ghost, and the Cannon card. In addition, spells such as the Fireball and the Poison are essential to get that Ram Rider to connect. In most of these decks, you'll rarely be sending in the Ram Rider alone, and there will be a combination of support troops to help get that Ram Rider to the tower. This is because the Ram Rider has a snare ability, meaning that the opponent's defenses will generally be placed directly on top of the Ram Rider, and then the support units will be able to kill any of those units. The snare is also essential on defense. After using the snare to slow down opposing units on a defense, the Ram Rider can transition seamlessly from defense to offense, making it a very unique win condition. The Ram Rider deck today is going to be another P.E.K.K.A bridge spam deck. The playstyle is going to be very similar to the Battle Ram one. The two are actually quite similar cards. Skeleton Barrel. The Skeleton Barrel is another bait win condition that is also somewhat annoying due to its dual stage, the barrel stage and the skeletons. Like all other bait win conditions, the Skeleton Barrel also needs to be in a fast deck. When building a deck around the barrel, you pretty much need a secondary win condition, because if a player has a consistent Skeleton Barrel combination, you're gonna need some other option to break through. If you're building a classic log bait deck, well then any other bait cards will suffice, such as the Goblin Gang, the Princess, or even the Goblin Barrel. And if you're going wild with something such as a Golem clone deck, well then you're gonna move into a completely different archetype altogether. My biggest tip to play the Skeleton Barrel is to simply cycle as many of them as possible. Because first off, it's hard to counter all the skeletons if you don't have a small spell in cycle, and secondly, the Skeleton Barrel does deal death damage, and it's very consistent if the opponent doesn't have a good way to stop the barrel from actually connecting to the tower. The deck shared today is going to be a Golem clone deck because these decks are just so wild and so fun to play. 3 Musketeers. Similar to the Royal Hogs, the 3 Musketeers are a dual lane win condition, and the decks built around the 3 Musketeers will also have the same focus. These Musketeers are very expensive at 9 elixir, so you're almost always going to need an elixir pump. And there actually is a synergy there as well, because the opponent can only use their big spell on one of the pump and the Musketeers. Additional support cards will include bridge spam such as Battle Ram, Bandit, and the Royal Ghost, because again, the focus of a 3 Musketeer player will always be double lane pressure. In fact, if the opponent has a push coming your way, you can even split these 3 Musketeers to play defense in one lane while playing offense in the other. Currently, there is only one 3 Musketeer deck that is seen in this meta, so that's the one I'm going to be sharing today. Wall breakers. The wall breakers are the cheapest win condition in the game, and in return, they provide some of the fastest paced gameplay. Most wall breaker decks are also going to need a secondary win condition to be a little bit more stable. This comes in the form of cycle decks, which has support cards such as Bomber, Tesla, Goblin Drill, and Valk, and alternatively, the wall breakers are used in a few medium cost decks as well, mostly ones that include the Miner and the Mega Knight. Most of these decks will be chip style decks, getting a wall breaker connection here and there, and chipping at the tower with other support units. One tip for the wall breakers is to play an offensive set of wall breakers while you are actually playing a defense, because this can not only allow you to cycle to more of your defensive answers, but you're also going to throw a wrench in your opponent's plans, because they're going to decide if they want to take that 800 damage or so from 2 wall breakers connecting. This is the wall breakers deck I chose to share today. It's a bit more of an expensive medium cost deck, but in my eyes, it's much easier to pick up compared to the wall breaker cycle decks. Expo. Expo is one of the most infamous win conditions in Clash Royale, and it's also some of the more complex ones, as recent metas have made it more and more difficult for Expo players to succeed. First off, Expo is an expensive win condition at 6 Elixir. This means that a large majority of Expo decks will have cheaper support, such as Skeletons, Knight, Ice Wizard, and the Archers. Mostly, the goal is to outcycle the opponent's Expo counters, but nevertheless, there are actually more expensive Expo variants that aim to build up bigger Expo pushes. In general, Expo is better in single Elixir, and that's when you're going to be trying to get most of your Expo locks, especially against the heavy beatdown decks in this meta. And the goal of these Expo decks is to always outcycle or bait out the opponent's Expo counters. Finally, the Expo is also a defensive building, and it can get you a lot of defensive value while allowing you to cycle back to a second Expo, which you might be able to play on offense. The deck I'm sharing today is Expo, very well known deck, and also very effective in the current meta. So there we go, a very quick guide on how to use every single win condition currently in Clash Royale. But unfortunately, guys, that's all I've got time for in today's episode. Huge thanks to all of my channel members. You guys are the absolute G's. If you enjoyed, please leave a like down below, as well as a subscription to my channel. And as always, this is Legendaray, and I'm signing off. See you guys next time.